One of the most spectacular and heart-racing matches just happened, where Leviatán took on the defending Masters champions in Sentinels, where world records were broken by their star player, aspas, to pull off an upset against the #1 team in the world. So how did they solve Sentinels and shut down their world-class players? Well, it's two reasons: isolating star players like Tenz for easy kills, and playing around what aspas needs to succeed to win these tough rounds that other top teams haven't been able to do so far this season against this red-hot Sentinels team. But before we look at and analyze one of the most cinematic matches of the season, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more pro analysis videos and deep dives into different parts of Valorant history, like my most recent video all about the prime of Ye's career, which you should check out after this video. So before we get into why this recent clash with Sentinels is such an upset for this Leviatán team that has on paper one of the most talented teams in franchising, being considered a super team just 2 months before. So right from the announcement of aspas to Leviatán, this team had really high expectations, but after Calm joined the team, people truly started calling it a super team, with expectations that they would fight right away for a top 3 finish in a Masters. But in the kickoff tournament, they were placed in the group of death, with Sentinels, Loud, and 100 Thieves all fighting just to make it out of groups. And while there weren't high hopes for 100 Thieves, it looked like one of the 3 superstar teams would have to fall out early and face humiliation. And after Lev barely scraped by against 100 Thieves in the final round of regulation, it was clear which super team was going to drown in their own expectations, as the outside dysfunction seemed to be seeping into the roster. Their gameplay just didn't look as polished as the other teams in their group, ultimately losing to Sentinels in 3 maps, where on split they looked completely unrecognizable from the team that was being labeled a super team, being eliminated from kickoff in the group stages. And it just got worse for Lev when the split started, as they were defeated by Cloud9 in their opener, who had just switched up their roster and had been consistently clowned on for being mid, a complete slap in the face to the team that was expected to be a top 3 team in the Americas. So their match against Sentinels had to go well to give everyone a glimpse of hope for this team. On the other side, everything had been working out for Sentinels, going on a Cinderella run after their match against Lev in the group of death, winning Masters Madrid and starting off the season on the right foot with a 2-0 sweep against a solid 100 Thieves team, with the team quickly silencing doubt they wouldn't be able to continue on their hot streak after winning it all, with them not even needing their superstar duelist in Zekken to play that well, as they won handily to move to 1-0 before their matchup against Leviatán. And when going through the map picks against Sentinels, it's kind of a lose-lose situation when allowing Sentinels to pick a map, as they have 2 maps that have just looked dominant on time in and time again, that being Split and Lotus. So Leviatán decided to ban Split to set up a first map on Sentinels Lotus, which is where the majority of the insanity happened in this matchup. We got clutch after improbable clutch to get a multi-overtime map that saw the most kills in a single map to be set. And while I'll take a more dramatic look at this map and how crazy it got in a future video, I want to dive in first to how Leviatán were ultimately able to push Sentinels to their wits' end and eventually win the whole map. And like I said during the intro, the first reason for Leviatán to have figured out Sentinels is by how they played to isolate players like Tenz or Zellsis when they're supposed to be holding down a site. To get an in-game example of how taking out Tenz first can completely change how Sentinels play the round, we have to look at round 4, where Tenz pushed out quickly onto Mound with the security of Zekken next to him. But right on the other side of the Omen smokes is where the full force of Lev are, with the tip of the spear being the world champion aspas, who has already started to heat up this match. But to make it easier and isolate any duels on Mound, they actually smoke off the left lane around Mound, as they peek towards the right lane where Tenz is now isolated from being traded by Zekken. With all this showing great awareness by Lev to know that any push by Sentinels early in this area would never be a solo push, allowing Lev to play to their strengths with aspas taking the duel against Tenz. And what's amazing here is that there is no losing for Lev, as if he loses the duel, he can most likely get traded out, resulting in Sentinels losing a critical smokes player early, while Lev just loses an entry player, which isn't quite as important after the site hit, which they would easily get after this early fight. But it works out for aspas as Tenz gets taken out, forcing Zekken to push and try to get some sort of trade, but aspas is able to eliminate him as well, giving Lev the player advantage and an easy plant on C that leads to Sen having to save their rifles. And in the most intense rounds of them all, Leviatán were able to do something similar to Zellsis on the other side of the map, as Lev's goal in round 27 is to pressure C to see if they can get the B player to rotate, where the moved up players on Lev can overwhelm A's site before Sen can react. But here, Sen actually decides against having a rotate player on B, and rather stacked 3 on C, which actually works even better for Lev, as they quickly rotate off of C after feeling presence, where King and Tex are securing space towards A, to give them plenty of options, but still with so much time they prod in B, to keep Sentinels guessing as they make sure they're hitting the right site, as the position Tex is in can both work as a great flank if they decide to plant on B or C, while also being a great forward position on A if they decide to execute on that site, as this view divides the front and back of the site, isolating Zellsis without him even knowing. But Lev is pushed up so far on A that right when the doors open, they're able to explode on A's stairs. Zellsis had nowhere to hide, as he just had to eat the nade, while johnqt couldn't do anything to trade off of him, as there's no one that even peeked yet, taking down the site anchor for Sentinels, where they end up getting destroyed by aspas to push it to map point in overtime. Which leads to another reason why Leviatán won this critical Lotus, as Lev relied heavily on their superstar aspas, breaking the single map kill record at 47, with a lot of the rounds on the attacking side showing both how the game plan is built around the idea of aspas go kill, and how their strat and anti-stratting has overall increased, especially after their upsetting Cloud9 game. Let's dive into round 15, where things don't go right for Lev right at the beginning, with Khan being taken out by a util combo and a raise ult, giving Sentinels all a B to plant. So Leviatán will have to pull off a hard retake, with the player disadvantage. But one advantage they do have is the knowledge of where most of Sen will be probably set up for the post plant, while Sentinels have no idea where they will be coming from. So instead of grouping up to all push onto site together in a more organized way, they know they just need to give aspas the best odds to take 1v1 duels, which he's been winning all match. So they smoke off anyone in B main and pressure Saucy at the breakable door, as well as blinding Tenz, right when aspas and Tex both swing onto site. While Tex is killed, it allows aspas to trade off of them, and then turn and take Tenz out just as the blind wears off, with Saucy now alone at A link, still being pressured by King. And he's taken out by aspas as well, to give them the player lead and site control, completely flipping the script on Sentinels in seconds, because of how they set up aspas to take these 1v1 duels one at a time, rather than him being overwhelmed at any point. And while they ended up losing the round thanks to some KJ mollies, this was a common occurrence, as aspas was set up to take these rounds into his hand and force his way to victory, which resulted in rounds and highlights that gave them one of the greatest single map performances by a player in all of Pro Valorant. And on Icebox, it was just as close, as neither team could take a real lead all the way down to the final round of the map, with Leviatán barely winning 13-11 to sweep Sentinels and throw off everyone's expectations of VCT this season, with aspas picking up another 20 kills to help his team take it, with Lev finally living up to some expectations. And with that, Leviatán had slain the best team in the world right now, making them look mortal going through the rest of the split, while Leviatán set themselves up well to make it to playoffs. And while both teams are still favorites to make it to America's playoffs, this could make holding the top seed hard for Sentinels, as they still have to face Loud, who has real possibility to take them down after facing enough times. But the real worry for Sentinels after this loss is that they could possibly slip against a team that they easily should beat in EG or Furia, as they are still pretty new together and have a lot of footage out of how they play every map, and could definitely lose in one of these matches if they aren't careful. And I don't really think that will happen for Sentinels, as they're a really disciplined and mentally strong team that should rebound against MIBR and take either first or second in Group Alpha. On the other side of the stage, Leviatán have put themselves in a great spot to make playoffs, as a lot of people expected them to lose this match and go 0-2, where they would have to win all their last games to get top 3. Now they just have to take on NRG, after this feel-good match that saw them click the best so far, and then face off against G2 and Crew, who they should defeat as they have the clear skill gap. The only worry is how much Lev really have to rely on aspas to be the best player in the map to win against top tier opponents, because when he's even a little off, they have games like Cloud9, as the comms are not as good as other teams, with small blunders costing them big in these moments. While aspas was able to bail them out on both maps to win, that might run out in an important match to cut their season short. But with a win here, it makes it a lot harder for them to completely bomb out of this split.